Good evening, everyone. I'm Rayleigh Honeycutt. I serve as the Executive Vice President for the Montana Stock Growers Association. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight and coming out. This is our 8th meeting, I believe, and we've had great attendance across the state, so it's really exciting to be in the eastern part of the state and really be able tonight to open it up to a discussion so that we can hear some of the thoughts on your mind, some of the challenges you're facing, and really talk about potential solutions and where, as an industry, we can come together and start working on issues that everyone can kind of rally behind and get behind. Before we kind of get into the meat of the evening, I did want to make a couple quick introductions. First off, we have MSGA board members that are with us tonight. Turk Stovall right here, he's kind of going to be co-moderating with me this evening. Turk is our second vice president. We have Monty Lesh from Miles City. He serves as one of our district directors. Lon Rukoff over here, as well as Keith Dennison from the Sydney area. So excited to have many of our board members joining us tonight. And then in addition to that, we have additional staff members. Ellie Brighton, who is over in the corner, she'll be taking notes for us, and Ian Kane, who you met when you walked in and registered. Ian is our membership person, so I'll do our shameless plug. If you're not a member of Montana Stock Growers and would like to be, Ian is the guy to talk to. If you haven't received a sheet when you walked in, make sure to grab those. Ian has a couple, but I think we covered almost everybody. So this will be kind of an interactive evening, and so you'll need one of these sheets to kind of follow along, and they have some directions.
And you have one?
Also wanted to again thank Vaughn, and then also introduce Forrest Mangan. He's with LMA. They worked with Vaughn and have been, all of the livestock markets have been sponsoring the facilities for all of these listening sessions, so we really want to thank them as well. Kind of the last update or housekeeping item I have is that we are live streaming this meeting and recording this meeting, so just be aware of that as we go through the evening. If you have interest in hearing what other regions are saying, we are hosting all of those videos on the mtbeef.org website, so you can go back and watch meetings from other areas, or listen to anything from the culmination of the meeting. So I would encourage you to check that out. We will have a public comment period this evening, but if for some reason you don't want to speak tonight, or you have ideas or thoughts after the meeting, we do have an online form as well at the mtbeef.org website. You can go on there and submit additional comments, thoughts, or ideas as they come to you later down the line. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Turk, and he's going to kind of give a little background and set the stage for what we have lined up for this evening.
Thank you, Rayleigh. Again, my name's Turk Stovall. I'm second vice president of Montana Stock Growers. My family, we also ranch south of Billings. We have 2 feed yards that we operate as well. And really a lot of the background of this this meeting series really just comes from ranchers getting together and saying, hey, there are some issues out there that we really need to do something about. And we really need to make sure that real farmers and ranchers have a voice to be able to give feedback and saying, hey, these are other things that we need to be looking at. Now, just to kind of lay some of the groundwork, is a lot of these ideas came from a working group some MSGA board members participated with the LMA working groups. And that LMA working group held working groups across the United States, and one of them was held here in Montana, and producers in Montana were involved, and we came together to talk about issues that, hey, there's some pretty serious issues that we need to get together, and we need to actually just really get together. And we have a lot of different organizations out there that, maybe one topic's a really big topic for them, and they don't like the other organization's topic is their number one. And we were just saying, hey, you know what? We need to pick some topics here and really get behind and unify. And through that, there was really just some ground rules that we all set before when we all really met. And there's some topics out there, it doesn't seem like we can really get on the same page. And one of those is country of origin labeling, the beef checkoff, the markets, the feeder cattle market or the fat cattle market. And for tonight, if you wouldn't mind, out of respect of the meeting, we're just not going to talk about those. And we're just going to say, you know what, let's just set those aside. We're going to say, you know what, we've talked about them for 20 plus years, and everyone has different ideas, but tonight, let's talk about some topics that we can all get around. Regardless of what organization maybe you represent or you're involved in, you know, if it's Farm Bureau, we've actually had, how many? We've had 8 meetings. And what's been really great and powerful about these meetings is that we have invited everybody. And you're really part of a bigger cause, especially in where we're at in this series of meetings, is a lot of people are looking at Montana right now and listening to Montana. Because this is one of the first efforts of going across an entire state and saying, you know what, let's put these topics aside and let's see what type of topics we can work on together across all organizations. We've had leaders from RCAF. Bill Bullard was at our first meeting. We have had leaders from the U.S. Cattlemen's Association. We have leaders from Farm Bureau, Montana Farmers Union, Montana Cattlemen's Association, and many. And we're all sitting here going, hey, what can we do to get some wins? You know, I always, I steal a little bit of thunder from Joe Goggins, and he would say, you know what, we all have our number one topic that we want to get across the finish line, but maybe we don't all have the same one. But if we could all agree what our number 2 topic is, and let's work on it together and make it our number 1, we can be much more effective with our elected officials and really get something done. And that's the purpose of why we're here tonight, is we really want to get something done. And we want to hear from you and get some good feedback. As Ray Lee mentioned, this is live streamed. And so there's many others listening to our comments tonight. And we're only part of the process. Actually, most of the process is with you guys giving your feedback. And so how we move forward with that is we said, where do you start? And so that we've picked 5 different topics as saying, you know what, these are areas that we sure hear a lot about. And we're not saying they're the only areas, but they're for sure some pretty big topics. And the one of them is taxes. And the estate tax is one of the number 1 topics out there that if we don't do something about, and these exemptions go away, it will be not only devastating, but it will take out some ranches completely. And the other topic is the facts, is there are less producers coming into our business than actually going out. And what are we going to do about it? And what kind of solutions do we need to come up with? The other is labor. Probably every time we go anywhere and we talk about what's going on at home, probably labor is a topic that comes up. And that's one of our topics. The other is what is the role of government? You know, we have different programs out there that are really trying to help the cow-calf sector. We've been talking a lot about the livestock risk protection. What we've learned is as we keep bringing this, there's a lot of producers that don't even know that's a tool that they have available to them, and we'll talk about that tonight. But is there ways that we can improve the LRP to be even more effective? And if it's not that effective, we need to hear about it. And lastly is mentorship. When we talk about trying to get the next generation into either our operations, or maybe the next generation is a younger man or woman saying, you know what, I want to go out and farm and ranch. Is that even possible if they didn't even come from a ranch or ranching operation? Well, if we had a mentorship program to where another ranch would help them get going, maybe that's a solution. And so that is just a snippet to get us going and to get you thinking. And I'll hand it over to Ray Lee here, but we have some really awesome, the Montana Stock Growers staff has just done a phenomenal job of organizing our process here and getting feedback. And what's been really neat about this is this exercise that we're getting ready to go through has been done at every sale barn. And so we're getting this data. And what's been interesting is getting just the feedback from the different parts of even Montana. And sometimes you're getting a little bit different feedback. And so all of that we're going to be compiling, and a lot of this will be represented at the Montana Stock Growers mid-year meetings in June. And why that's so important is one of the whole basis is why we're here is were those producers that were involved in that LMA working group. They put together resolutions that brought to the annual conference last December at the Montana Stock Growers Conference and passed a resolution that said, hey, we need to do something about this, and we need it to be done now. And those resolutions passed, and that is why we're here today, is we're following what our membership said to do. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ray Lee, and I look forward to everybody's feedback.
Thanks, Turk. Well, one thing before we kind of head into the interactive section that I did want to mention is Turk mentioned that the importance of, as an industry, what can we do from a policy standpoint to come together and, bring forward issues that we can all agree upon? Because in many conversations we've heard, it's very hard when you're hearing 5 different opinions and priorities and stories, what really to do for the livestock industry, or what really should be the #1 priority to be worked on. So I did want to take this opportunity to recognize some of our congressional representatives that are here, and we have some candidates as well. So if you want to stand up and recognize or announce yourself and introduce yourself, that would be great. Awesome. Any other staff? Any candidates?
Yeah, my name is Rick Holden. I'm a farmer and rancher right here in Dawson County, about 20 miles upriver. And I'm a member of the Montana Stock Growers Association as well as the Farm Bureau.
Thank you so much. And I will say that obviously this is going to be a unified effort, but both individuals that just introduced themselves have been to multiple listening sessions, so we really appreciate the time that you guys are investing in these listening sessions as well. All right, so if you want to turn to the second page in your program, you will find a sheet that has a QR code. If you're not familiar with how QR codes work, you can take out your cell phone and open up your camera and put your camera on the QR code and a website address you can click on and pop up. But we are hoping to do some live interactive surveying from this group. So I would ask each of you to get your cell phones out right now and pull up this web address and the QR code, and you'll see highlighted there is a passcode included in that. And so really we have about 5 questions that we'll be asking you as we kind of prep for the open comment period, and then we'll have some follow-up questions after public comment period. But this is really our opportunity to, as Turk mentioned, get some standardized questions out there, no matter where folks are in the state, that we're able to kind of pull together and look at collectively as an industry, but also when we analyze the data, look at it from a regional perspective too, so that something in Glendive might be a much more higher priority than something in Butte. So if you want to take a few seconds, Ian's right there. If you don't know how to use your QR code or need some tech assistance, Ian's available to kind of run over and help you get that pulled up. But we'll give you a few seconds to get the website pulled up, and then again your QR code or your code to enter is 4644268. Ellie, do you want to put up the first question so they can kind of see it?
We'll take a little time as everyone's kind of putting their answers together, but this has actually been pretty powerful exercise, just getting everybody's just feedback on, hey, what does this really mean to you? And you know, some of the answers we've had at other events and stuff we'll probably share afterwards, because I don't want to bias anybody's answers now. But the other thing that's been pretty neat is Ray Lee and their staff actually give you guys these results in a follow-up email, and then you can have that.
All right, it looks like a few people are still getting things pulled up, but we're going to go ahead and start with our first question. So the first question is, what do you think about when you think about producer profitability, what 3 words come to mind? And so you can just enter those into your survey. This is called a word cloud if you're not familiar with what a word cloud is. As people submit the same answer over and over again, the word gets bigger. So you'll see as more submissions start coming in, it'll start shifting, words will start getting bigger and smaller. But really something that we are somewhat seeing similar answers as we kind of travel the state, but some of those that we're seeing right now include sustainability, inflation, profit, cash flow, efficiency, markets, profit. Everybody doing good? Anybody need help?
You can use any words you want. Really.
Well, I'd ask you not to use bad words, Lon, but yes, you can use any words you want.
You have to hit enter or something, or should you just type them in and it works?
I think you have to hit enter. Is there an enter at the bottom? Submit. There's a submit at the bottom. He's asking me all these questions that I don't know. I don't have it in front of me.
I definitely have to say the word sustainability has been a consistent, larger emphasis when you, Ray Lee,
Yes.
for this question.
We're seeing some newer submissions, though, like ranch improvements, generational income, next generation. So exciting there. We'll give you about 5 more seconds to hit that submit, and then we'll move on to the next question.
There we go. Profit came up. Profit's been another one that's you for sure see in other groups as well.
All right, let's move on to the next question. In 20 words or less, share with us the biggest challenges you face in your operation as in regards to growth and success. Labor popped up quite quickly there. Probably one of the top answers that we're seeing around the state. And this one you can submit as many words or answers as you would like. Cost of land, labor, and succession planning. That's a big one we continue to see. Access to capital, access to land, continue to be challenges, especially we're hearing that from the next generation or those trying to kind of transition into the industry.
Finding pasture, that's definitely a common one. I see it now, interest came up there. Interest has been a big one that's been brought up a lot as well.
Drought and grasshoppers, again, something that we're seeing quite a bit, obviously, have been a big challenge in the last, or in recent years. Those out of your hands elements that always definitely have huge impacts on your bottom line and in operation. All right, I think we're ready to move on to the next question. In the last 10 years, what tools or programs have been the most beneficial to your operations profitability? We have you guys thinking on this one.
FSA programs of sure, value-added programs, and obviously cheaper interest. Those definitely have come up a lot. Alliances with end users, seen that quite a bit as well. Yeah, here we go, low interest.
Not sure who put grant up there, but would love to hear as we open up the public comment period what grant that is, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, how it could be replicated, if the limits on the grant should be higher, lower, all of those types of things. We really want to hear from you so that as we're working on policy and programs, we really have those detailed specifics to take back to the decision makers.
Conservation type payments and how there's a $50,000 limit on a lot of these conservation programs, and there's a pile of money that the NRCS has for conservation, and this Tom Watson, I think is the state conservationist, said it was amazing how many people couldn't their conservation payments were far in excess of the $50,000. And he's got money to give away that he can't give away.
All right, let's move on to our next question. What do you believe the biggest challenge for the livestock industry, and what will they face in the next 20 years? I like this group effort in front of me. Teamwork makes the dream work, yeah? Weather, activists, interests, lab-grown protein. Younger generation leaving. urban sprawl, unnecessary regulations. Labor popping back up there is a very popular one again.
Oh, sorry.
All right. How about 5 more seconds and then we will move on. Get those last submissions in. All right, and we've seen a couple responses around generational transfer, succession planning, those types of things. And so this question really is for us to gauge a little bit about where each of you are within that process. So regarding succession planning, share with us which category you most relate to. I'm a young producer transitioning into an operation. I do not have a succession plan. I'm in the process of creating succession plan. I have a succession plan. I plan to exit the industry, or this is not applicable to me.
Haven't we had at least one exiting every session now? Yeah.
Oh, pretty close, yeah. There. What was that?
You get to make your own
You
schedule.
get to, yeah, self-selection. You know, it's really, speaking of self-selection, it's really interesting how people respond to this one because, you know, the average age of a farmer or a rancher right now is 65 years old. So are you a beginning farmer if you're 65 years old? There's a lot of questions and how, you know, federal programs play into that as well. It's when you think of young or beginning farmer, it may not be a 25-year-old like you may think. All right, sounds great. Okay, so we're going to take a break from there. Thank you so much. Don't close out of those screens because we have a couple wrap-up questions at the end. But at this time, I'm going to kind of hand it over to Turk, and we'll kind of lay the rules out for our public comment period. This is the part where we want to hear from you, so I'd encourage you to feel free to stand up and share your thoughts and opinions. We'll have Ian with a mic. He'll kind of help run it around so you guys don't have to navigate these stairs. But Turk, I'll let you kick it off, and we'll go from there.
All right, thanks, Rayleigh. Now that we got everybody warmed up, and appreciate everybody's feedback. Just so you know, I know those words got small there, but you'll get to see those again. And keep in mind, you guys are part of the solution. And so if there's things you want that you can't see, maybe even after the meeting, call Rayleigh and the staff there, and they will for sure share it with you as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to get into a part of the program where we're wanting to hear from you guys. And we're trying to make it as organized and as structured and orderly as possible. And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to go through these 5 areas of topics and just spend a little time on them. And let's start with taxes. And so if we could take the next short period of time and just talk about taxes and what does that mean to your operation. And the big topics that have keep coming up, you know, the elephant in the room is the estate tax. You know, some other topics that come up is accelerated depreciation. Accelerated depreciation is also set to expire. We have talked about a little bit of capital gains as well. But let's just talk about estate tax. If there's one thing that could shut down a multi-generational family ranch, is the estate tax. Or you could call it the death tax, or whatever it is. But the one thing we have to make sure of, and we all have to get together on, and we have to help Senator Daines' team be able to take a clear message on what that estate tax can detrimentally do to our operations. And right now, we are sitting with a 12.5 million exemption per spouse, and that's going to change. If we do nothing, it goes to zero. And so what should it be? Now, we've had discussions all from there shouldn't even be an estate tax. Now, not everybody seems to be on the same page of that as you especially get into the really global picture of the U.S. politics. But would like to get some feedback from you all on those topics, and if there's any others. We've also talked about taxes relative to our state. Our state's changed, and it is changing. And what's happening is there's a lot of folks coming into our state, buying these ranches, and just so happens they're not necessarily turning cows back out. It's on another purpose. And should that still be taxed the same? And that's been a really big topic as well, to the point there, and just for knowledge, there's an effort to talk about that with a committee with the governor's office. And so I'm just gonna, the point isn't for me to be talking all night, the point is for you guys to be talking. And so the one thing, and we'll probably just be like a broken record, but if you would like to visit or talk, and we want you to make sure you have the microphone. Please state your name. And the whole reason is keep in mind, you are not just talking to everybody in the room here. You're talking to everybody online, and we're also recording this so we can make sure that we don't miss a lot of your thoughts. And so we'll just turn it over to you all.
I don't want to be recorded.
Well, just so you know, I mean, if the mics pick you up, you are live stream, and that's the point of the meeting. But I mean, just so you're. Well, the one way we could to fix that is we could just visit afterwards, and then you just tell us what ideas you want us to carry forward, and that's totally fine too. Yep. And that's totally your decision. We respect that completely. So, but we definitely want the ideas.
Yeah, so Lon Rukoff, we have wrestled with this estate thing long before, when the exemptions were much lower. So I don't have to worry right now till 2026. So I better keel over soon. One thing a lot of people don't understand is that these exemptions give you a stepped up basis. So if I were to, my wife and I were to sell our ranch today, we'd have to pay a significant amount of capital gains tax, on the sale of the ranch. However, if her and I drove off the Yellowstone Bridge and died, and our son and daughter got the ranch, they could sell it the next day with no capital gains tax. And that's the stepped up basis. And so what I'd like to see is no estate tax and very little stepped up basis. Because if the people that inherit my ranch decide, it's a great opportunity for them to cash out. Because if Vicki and I sell our ranch, we owe a bunch of taxes. And if my son Thane and my daughter Lynn's decide that they want to be rich and not pay any taxes, they can do that. So when you're negotiating, especially Senator Daines, about upping this estate tax, I wish that we would divorce the basis from the estate tax. So let's have no estate tax period, but no stepped up basis. And I think that would be more palatable to the IRS, because they know they're going to get their money someday, unless you keep passing it down in the generations. And then nobody has to pay the estate tax. I had a neighbor, his father died, and he about had to rebuy. This was in like 2000, right before the estate tax jumped. You know, it was only about $1.5 million there, right? That, and he had to pay $1.5 million in estate tax. It's 45% once you go over that cap, you know. So that's, I would divorce the estate tax and the basis, the stepped up basis.
So just to share, I want to say this idea came out of Glasgow, maybe, Monty. Let me try to muddy through it, and you can clean me up if I've got it wrong here. But so one idea is to have an exemption. God, Monty, you better probably explain it. But the idea is to give the best advantage for a ranch to give the ranch to their children. And if they did that and then they operated it over time, that estate tax virtually would almost be zero if they kept it in operation for, let's say, 10 years. Am I saying that quite right? Or maybe Monty's a lot better at talking about this than I am.
Monty Lesh, so that's a good summary. The idea was to be able to pass it on and avoid any estate tax over a period of time. And the discussion kind of revolved also around maybe there could be an exemption or a tax credit against capital gains taxes if somebody sold a ranch to a young producer, and use your own definition of that, that there would be a reduction in, you could sell it at a reduced price and not owe capital gains tax, even though you still had a gain on the sale. I'm aware of a couple that has sold 3 ranches. They had no children, and they helped some young people, and they took between a 35 and a 40% discount to the market on the value of what they sold, and they still owed capital gains tax because their basis was low. So they helped people get started, but they still had to pay a bunch in capital gains tax, which it defeated the purpose of them selling it well below the market. So there's been some discussions as far as tax policy to help implement that. But the idea of, it's going to be very politically difficult to eliminate the estate tax, and I think that we need to, at a minimum, keep the levels in that we have now, indexed to inflation. That will protect a lot of people.
Yep, right down here, Ian.
Hey, Shane Eaton. I'm not going to really talk about the death tax, Turk, because we've had, you don't want to talk about other topics tonight, but we've been talking about the death tax for a long time. Senator Daines is maybe one of the most powerful senators in the Senate now, might be the minority leader, and he hasn't produced anything. So I think we're chasing dreams. So if we can focus on Montana, North Dakota exempts what I believe farm buildings and improvements and residents. So I think we should get an ag exemption in Montana. It's pretty easy. You talk about absentee owners, okay? And people have brought this up several times. Right now, when you do your taxes, if you have 2/3 of your gross income from farming or ranching, you get special rules with the IRS. So we can simply transform that to the state of Montana side, where if you do not have 2/3 of your income from farming or ranching, then your property tax is going to get classified differently. I don't think that's out of bounds at all. And it makes a lot of sense, because you can still get some income, but if you have all your income coming from investments out of state, then it makes perfect sense. And then we keep kicking the can down the road on machinery tax, and machinery costs keep going like this. Ranches, farms seem to get a little bit bigger every year. Machinery gets more expensive. Let's just exempt ag from machinery tax or get rid of it completely. And so how do we pay for some of this stuff? Right now, everybody in this room should be advocating for a severance tax on wind. We don't have a severance tax on wind. We get to pay tax per capita every year. We get to pay it on coal and oil and gas, but not wind. We don't pay it on solar. So let's offer up some ideas how we can pay for some of these exemptions we want to get that make a lot of sense. And wind gets taxed at a different rate on their property, or not their property, their generating facilities. They already get a 75% discount. So I think we should offer up solutions to try to come up with some of these exemptions. And I think those are a few we could work on.
Sheena, I didn't even recognize you. Well, one of those, just to add on to that, is those would be really good things to take that state committee. You know, and we should, but we should summarize it, and you know, those are all really good ideas.
So, is that better? Okay. So since we're on the topic of, you know, how do you pay for these exemptions or whatnot, sorry, Tate Buxell here, that's my name. One of the things I think the state here is missing is a state sales tax. And I might get ran out of the room for saying that, but right now the state of Montana has all their income, in that entire income is put on the burden of the residents in this state. If you implement a state sales tax, Montana has a boatload of recreation and outdoor people that come to this state for hunting, fishing, and we have 2 giant state parks, which I know Yellowstone is mostly in Wyoming, but the vast majority of travelers that go to Yellowstone come through the state of Montana, stay in Montana hotels, stay in Montana towns. So that is a revenue stream that we can get from out of state people that don't live here to help supplement the state income.
Yeah, good. Great feedback. Anybody else? I'm taking notes, but what's nice is it's recorded. Yeah.
Hey, Turk, to Mr. Buxell's point, we had a $3 billion surplus in the last session. Isn't that right? What did we do? Was it 2? I thought it was over 2. A little over 2. What did we do? I mean, of what we're talking about here in this panel right now, what did we do? Did we spend it? We spent all of it, except for the stuff we got back in our little rebates. But I mean, we what else did we do pertaining to this topic?
Well, I will add that the governor did increase business equipment tax to $1 million, which was a huge step from the $300,000 we had the previous session. But to your point, exemption, yes. To your point, though, I think there's an appetite to do some things on a state level, and so some of the things that you brought up, I think, can go further and have a bigger conversation because the timing is right. The surplus is going to be a lot tighter this next session, but we have very much a business-friendly climate right now that we can make some changes in. To kind of add to what Turk said regarding the Department of Revenue's working group and land classification, so there's 2 working groups right now that are reviewing things. There's a property tax one, so how do they lower property taxes for residents, which to me is very concerning. And the governor said sales tax is off the table. So that only shifts the tax burden to a few other areas, and you guys are all included in one of those areas. The other area is the Class 3 classification, and if there is a need to add a new classification around recreational use or what qualifies you for agricultural land. So they're still trying to decide what that might look like. Is it gross profit or gross revenue per acre? Is it like we have now where it's a very low threshold of $1,500 gross revenue and you're qualified for agriculture. Those conversations are happening right now, and Montana Stock Growers has a representative, John Lewis. He's out of Lavina, sitting on that Department of Revenue committee, and he wants to hear from folks. So if you have thoughts specific to that, he is willing and ready to take your phone calls, and I can get you in contact with him. But they're meeting on a monthly basis and really starting to hash out what that might look like moving forward, with the expectation that there will be a bill this next legislative session. Turk, should we move on to our next category? Any other tax? All right. So the next one, and I'm going to hand it back over to Turk because of government programs, and he's very passionate about LRP and knows a lot about it. So you want to kind of kick off what this category covers?
Yeah, so we talk about what the role of, I guess, government programs are. It almost seems to be kind of an electric topic. So it's, many will say, hey, we don't want the government involved at all in the livestock sector. And so, but at the same time, we do have programs that are involved in the livestock sector. And, are they any good? Are they helpful? We use LRP as an example, and it's livestock risk protection, and I'm assuming everyone has heard of that before. If not, please look at your handouts. There's just a write-up on that just to give a quick explanation. But more or less, it's a subsidized option, and you can actually get an LRP on even unborn calves. And so in today's environment, where we're looking at some of the highest cattle prices we've seen ever, you can get the schedule of LRP and saying, hey, I want to put an LRP on these, and there's of course a premium. You don't pay that premium until the end, and that's one option. You can do it on feeder cattle. You can do it on fat cattle. And so the one thing that was brought to, as far as for us to look at, is the premium adequate? Is the premium adequate for a younger producer? The other thing to look at is, so we buy feeder cattle and we have feed yards, and if I buy cattle off the video this summer here in June, but the animal doesn't get delivered until October, right now you cannot utilize LRP. Some would say, hey, that should change, because if we want to really be able to use LRP, we should be able to utilize that risk protection tool the second that you obtain the risk of the animal, because you bought it. You're in a contract, and you want to be able to hedge your position that day that you say, yes, I'll take the calves. And that has been a really big discussion just on all of those fronts. So we really would like to kind of bring that up for discussion, and we can kind of rattle through a lot of different programs here relative to the government programs. FSA, there's FSA programs for young farmers. Are they effective? We have younger producers here in the crowd. Is that a tool that you have used, and has it been effective? I mean, are those numbers that do any good, or should they be bigger? If you were to go to a banker, I'm assuming, do you guys work with FSA loans? So see, not all banks, right? Not all banks work with the FSA loans. So then you would only have to go with a bank that would want to work with an FSA loan. And by the time you say, hey, I want to buy some cows, and I want to go through an FSA loan, and it seems like the process takes some time, and maybe it takes too long and the market has moved on. I mean, just think about it here in the last 12 months. You could have bought something at maybe $2,000 and now it's $3,000. You're buying bred cattle. And, you know, does that need to be improved? So we would like to talk about that or get feedback. There's been discussions on, we had a young producer, I think early on, just stood up and talked about the fact of, you know, if I wanted to buy some equipment and lease a farm, he felt like there was more support systems out there with the farm programs than if, hey, I wanted to go out and buy some bred heifers, lease some grass. And, you know, I think I could actually probably get a loan easier if I went out to farm than if I went out to try to be in the cow business. And so we've heard some good discussions about that. Is there a role of having someone that, you know, when we're trying to get more people to take our place, if you will, or to empower a younger generation to do what we do today, how do they get access to capital? Either someone's going to have to co-sign them with like the mentorship program that we mentioned earlier, or there has to be some other programs that saying, you know what, I realize you have zero experience in this and you don't have any background. Is there a program out there to help that person? So I'm just going to leave it open like that, and would love to have any comments. And we really encourage younger producers to step up and say, hey, this is what I need.
Keith Dennison, Sydney. They need to, my kids tried to go in and get FSA loans, and the paperwork was just unreal. I mean, it was stupid. It was easier for me to back them to go to the bank, where it shouldn't. I mean, they got to do something with the paperwork of that place, you know. And then on other programs, the livestock people don't want to deal with FSA, but we get disaster payments and all this stuff. So as livestock producers, we need to be at the table when they're doing a farm bill so that we are in there on the LRP, the disaster payments and stuff like that.
Hey, Turk, on your LRP analogy about how you buy cattle in June, they deliver in October, but you can't cover them. I don't want to guarantee you or people that buy cattle, I don't want to guarantee them. I think you should be able to step up, have some risk, go to other markets. So I don't see where we need to go farther out with an LRP. Not for cattle buyers anyway. Maybe for young people, maybe we could do something different. But as far as FSA, I've maintained for a long time that we should have an advisory board or group within the state, because I don't think there is one. You got your main office in Helena, right, the state FSA office, but we don't have an advisory group that can go through some of these programs and tell them how stupid they are, like Mr. Dynison just said. Because I go to FSA once in a while, and I know there's a lot of stupid programs, a lot of stupid paperwork, but the people that work there can't report that to anybody. So I think we should have an advisory group within the state of real people, not talking heads, that could say, hey, this program needs to be drastically changed like this and make it easier for producers to get into it and want to, or can use it. And I think that's the easy thing to do. It wouldn't cost hardly anything. It doesn't have to be Montana, but I would take other states and maybe have a regional thing or whatever it is. But I think there's real meat and potatoes in that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm Doug Unruh. I live out at Bloomfield, grew up on a ranch and farm here. And 40 years ago, FSA was the reason I was able to get into agriculture, because that's the only place I could get money. And it was painful. The people that I had to go visit with didn't have a clue what I was trying to do. But if you want to stay on the farm, you do what you have to do. And we were able to work through that, through the good times, the hard times. And we're able to raise our sons on the ranch and do what they enjoy. They've since left the ranch. Don't want to come back to the ranch. And so now I'm going to be 70, and me and my wife are looking at how are we going to slow down? How are we going to do this? And we have a neighbor lady that wants to get into ranching. Her parents farmed but weren't into cattle at all. And we've been able to mentor her and her family. This last fall, we sold her half of our cow herd, extended the payments out, tell her we don't need the money now, pay for us 3-4 years down the road. And I'm thankful I'm able to do that. But if we could have a little help in doing that would be outstanding. But I'm not asking for that. But I'm saying, that would make it easier to do what we've wanted to do.
That's a great example, and if you don't mind, I'd love to be able to share that story, because that's right in with our whole mentorship idea, and we believe that's vital to our future. So, thank you.
Yeah, Doug Lon Rukoff, what did you mean by help? Did you need what would help this transition for you?
Well, possibly, like, say if I'm going to sell these cows at a reasonable price, maybe Uncle Sam would say, well, then we'll decrease the taxes that you need to pay on those cows. I'm not big enough, and so I'm having to be concerned about a lot of estate taxes, things like that, but income tax gets in my back pocket pretty bad. If we could reduce maybe some income taxes or something on those livestock, something along that order.
Yeah, Turk, one of the ideas that I kicked around was some sort of nonprofit entity to help facilitate this transition from people who are getting ready to retire to non-relatives, because I've got a daughter that wouldn't care if she set foot in Terry, Montana again, ever, I don't think. And but I have a neighbor who's mentoring a young man, no relation, and he's leasing him part of his ranch, and this young man and his wife and 5 children are running this deal. But like Doug said, when a lot of us have built equity in a cow herd and pushed taxes forward through depreciation strategies, well, if you don't die and give it to somebody, the IRS is going to catch up with you when you try to sell out. And most people don't have enough money to sell out and pay the nursing home too, and the taxes. So some sort of nonprofit entity that would facilitate this transition of agricultural operations from elderly couple to a younger person that wants to get in the business and somehow get a tax savings like Doug was mentioning, to make this transition to a young operator. And it could be channeled through these laws that are used to help young farmers get started. So,
Right over here, Ian.
Seth Buxell, Savage, Montana. So I brought this up in Sydney a week ago, but a bipartisan piece of legislation that's in DC right now that would help compete with this FSA, Farm Credit Services issues is called the ACRE Act, ACRE, and it's a tax exemption to the local bank in communities of less than 2,500 people that would allow for tax exemption on their income against what they make on loans in rural agricultural sectors. So that'd put your local bank in more of a competitive market with your FSA crowd.
Yeah, great point.
Monty Lesh. So a couple of things that I've noticed over the years. I used to run banks, and 20 years ago, you could put a guarantee on a loan, and if you were an approved lender, you could just sign off on it, and FSA would guarantee the loan, up to 90%. That's a lot harder to get done today. I think that some of the paperwork has gotten very onerous. I helped a young couple buy an irrigated farm, and the maximum they could get from FSA was $600,000. Well, you all know that $600,000 doesn't buy you a whole lot anymore. And they actually had to come up with money out of pocket from other family members to complete the purchase. So I think if they can expand the credit limits and maybe put more of the underwriting and approval back on the lender that you're working with, whether it's Montana Live Ag Credit or Stockman Bank or Farm Credit Services or whoever it is, that would help a lot, because the paperwork is really burdensome, and most young people do not have the experience of applying for credit or doing those things, and a lot like what Lon talked about would be very helpful. So I guess from a political standpoint, expanding the credit limits and putting more of the underwriting back on local lenders and have them a participant in the process, I think you would be able to access capital easier at better terms, and banks would be more willing to make those loans.
Anybody else? We'll all be coming back to a lot of this too. So, just to kind of move forward, let's talk a little bit about labor. That would be for sure one topic that it seems like, and we've seen it come up on the board, is just, it just does not seem like it gets any better. And, what do we need to do about that? And what is the solution? We're probably seeing a lot more H-2A programs come into the state over for sure the last 5 years. Is that the answer? I don't know. But for sure the operations that seem to be using the H-2A programs have seemed to be satisfied with it. You get comments on the fact that back to the paperwork, goodness, there's a lot of paperwork involved, and if I guess you want to have the tongue-in-cheek statement, it would be probably easier for me to go down to the border and just pick somebody up, and instead of try to do it all right. So you could hear how that conversation goes, but just some thoughts on that. What do you guys think? It's we've had great discussion on the fact that, hey, we have communities that they're kind of dying, and it's just so hard to bring anybody in that wants to come into these communities, either because they're, it's a rural community or who knows what it is. And so we've had people say, hey, this is how the H-2A program has been good for us. And then we've also had producers saying, understand that, but I really don't want you to change my community. And so I'll just kind of open it up to hear some of your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, Lon Rukoff. I always made it a point to find a couple better than average high school kids to help me out, and a couple of them are right there. And Seth, that tank that you poured in 2000 is beginning to rot out. So if you want to come back and pour another one, I need it. But it is difficult to pick up labor, especially part-time. And I think that the conservation aspect for college students could be expanded some to help out farm and ranch operators. Right now, I sit on the Prairie County Weed Board, and we apply for these conservation internees or whatever you call them. And I think that that program could be expanded so that some college student could come out and help your farm and ranch in the summer and get a sort of matching scholarship to the university that they attend. And I think there's an avenue to do this, because a lot of us, I don't need a lot of extra help in December and January much, but from about last month till about October, I'm quite a ways behind. So some way to help college kids pay their tuition, and maybe a tax advantage for hiring them. I know that exists in this Conservation Corps deal. So
We'll have to talk to you guys later about what it's like to work for lawn. You can tell us all the secrets. One other area under this category that we've heard from a couple different listening sessions is the whole concept of generations aren't transitioning, and so we have an entire workforce that knows nothing about the industry in which they maybe are wanting to get into. And with that, there's, safety as it relates to equipment, safety as it relates to animals. And so how do we, and would love to get your guys' thoughts on, how do we train the next generation of workforce that has zero education or zero knowledge in what we do and how we do it, and they may do it in a different way than you and your dad and your grandpa did?
Yeah, Doug here again. We were small enough that our operation has just been a ma and pa outfit from the beginning, and then our sons when they were young. I sold registered cattle for 25 years, and so that meant I was AIing, and maybe that's why my sons decided ranching wasn't such a good idea. They don't like that sun up to sundown deal. But this young lady that we're working with, she's just had to spend time. And it takes a person with the right mentality to work cattle and a willingness to learn when you say, hey, if the cow's going where you want her to go, just leave her alone. You don't have to holler at her. You don't have to beat on her. And this girl has picked it up, and she's just really, really good. But, we've never hired any help, and that's why we're looking at dispersing and moving on. But it's really difficult. I think I've never been able to make myself go hire help. I've never done that. So I don't know, you guys that have to do that, it's tough.
I'm Tana Kanan, and we ranch on the western end of Dawson County, and we're a family operation, pretty small, and 3 generations currently working it. My dad will be 81 this year, and we've always had to have some help to make it work. And I think for me, I have a passion to help people, to bring them up, to teach them to learn. We've gotten into agritourism because I have people coming to the place. I'm sharing with them the story of where they're getting their food. But we're also always doing that with the young people that we have come in. We've done sort of an internship program through the years. It's changed over time. We used to have internationals, and then we've switched to more in-country. But it comes with caring enough about them to bring them alongside. We called it an internship program intentionally, so that they have an understanding that we think they don't know anything, and we will assume they don't know anything, and that just keeps everybody safer then. If they've been there and done that, that's fine. Maybe they'll hear it a little bit differently from us or whatever, but that way we're across the board working with them and training them up, have them working alongside somebody, and just listening to them and having patience with them. and just fostering that interest. For some, they've found that it's truly not what they want. For some, they've come thinking they were going to be a cowboy and found out that they really have a penchant for soil health and regenerative ag practices and have gone that route. So if people are just willing to open up and let those young people come in, it can help them find themselves.
So we can always come back to labor as well, and I'm just going to maybe lump the last two together, and I know we've already kind of touched on it, but how do we decrease the barriers of entry for this next generation to come in to being a producer? You know, it's been talked about in the previous ones. I want to say the average new producer age is 47 years old. And so the days of where, hey, our kids went to high school and they're going to come back home, you know, that would probably not be the majority anymore. You know, a lot of these kids will go back and maybe go to school somewhere or join the military or go work for someone else. And that might be by choice, or maybe it's just not time to come back. Maybe dad's not ready for him to come back, you know, or maybe this operation can't afford to, you know, bring on another person yet. And so, well, if they were passionate about it, how can we help them go somewhere else? And what are the biggest limitations for a new producer to go and do that? And when, just to help bring in ideas, you know, a new producer, and Ray Lee brought it up earlier, a new producer could be someone that just had nothing ever to do with agriculture. And they wanted to say they woke up one day, they had a great steak last night and go, man, I want to be a cowboy, you know? You know, do they even have a chance? Do they even have a shot at it? You know, the one thing that I've kind of thought about over having these is, you know, my family, we've employed a lot of great people and a lot of great young people, hard workers, passionate about what they want to do. But why would they ever work as hard as the owner if they just you know, they don't have a stake in the game? And how can we help them? I mean, you guys have employed a lot of people, and we've always had that one person we're like, man, I would love to really help that person. And what do they need? And we always summarize it back, and there's way more of this, but it's usually they need to be able to have access to capital, and they need access to land. And we've talked about different accesses to land, and we've even had a lady, well, afterwards come up, and because we will ask for feedback, but she said, you know, I didn't say anything about the access to land because, you know, I'm trying to go out and lease more ground, but I can't because I always get outbid. And I didn't want to say anything because the guys that outbid me are in the room. And so, but how do we help them go lease more land? Or do we help incentivize ranches to, should it be market price? And so it kind of also leads into this mentorship. And that was such a great example. And because I believe it's all tied together. And ultimately, the real sustainable solution is we're going to have to help our own. I mean, it's nice to talk about all these other programs, but probably the real sustainable in and out is we are going to have to help our own. And then how do we go about doing that?
So one thing, my son was a mechanical engineer for 10 years. And we used this opportunity. I told him, send money home and I'll take care of it for you. And but what we did is he would buy so many heifer calves a year, and he would write that off against his engineering wages. But you can only do that for so many years. I don't know what it is now, but I think it's 3 or 4 years. I mean, you can't have a continual loss in the cattle business. You know, you've got to make a profit once in a while. And so what I would like to suggest is something like an IRA, only it would be a future investment account for an agricultural producer. I got other neighbor kids that go to the oil field and they earn a hell of a lot of money, and their parents are not helping them keep that money. You know Everett and Henry Devlin, and these kids earn a lot of money, and they're not saving much of it. I bought them a bumper sticker that said, "Oh Lord, give me one more oil boom, and I promise not to piss this one away." And so having a program so that young people that wanted to get into agriculture could save money before tax money, like an IRA, and then they could purchase the assets, and then the assets would be non-depreciable. But when you're a young guy getting started, you don't need much depreciation. You need access to capital, and this would be your own capital that you're postponing taxes on. So I would call it an agricultural storage asset, like an IRA.
Thank you, Lon. Anyone else? That's a great suggestion. Anything? Well, why don't we do this? We're going to just kind of open it up. If you want to call it open mic, I mean, the whole point of going through all these is just to kind of create some thought and share ideas. And, if there's something that, maybe wasn't discussed, this would be a great time to bring it up. We would, appreciate it if you follow our format of it and just keep it focused on the topics and not the topics we said we don't want to talk about today. And, or maybe it's something we missed, or, I know we have some young producers over here that I've been pretty nice not to totally pick on you, but, I would love to hear your thoughts on what do you need? If you had said, this is what I need to get going, what is that? And how could we help? And just so you know, we don't have to totally put them on the spot just this second, and it's still open to everybody.
Hey, Turk, as far as the government programs, PRF, your rainfall insurance, talking along the same lines as you brought up about absentee owners, and then looking at, like I brought up, 2/3 of your income from farming and ranching. There's big places in Montana that are absentee owned that take out PRF that collect $500,000 a year, and they don't run any cattle. Or they might run a few, but it's not their 2/3 of their income. And so as we look at PRF going forward and how much the government is subsidizing for it, because they subsidize the pants out of it, and if that program starts to get too expensive, the government might not want to subsidize it. So to keep the program viable, we should really look into PRF and some of these places that do not have 2/3 of their income from farming and ranching being eligible to be in PRF. Because as we run out of money in the federal government, we're going to start spending less on programs, and the PRF is a really good program.
Anybody else? Good comments. Right over here, Ian.
I'd just like to make the comment that no matter at what point in one's life they get into agriculture, into production, it has to be run like a business, and people need to have good business education and understanding, or they're not going to make it. It's tough enough if you're good at it. And so I think that always has to be taken into consideration, not just getting them into agriculture, but having enough education behind them. Like Ranching for Profit's a really good one. But
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
Thanks, Lon. Josh Doley, I work for Montana Livestock Ag Credit, as mentioned. And we can't necessarily do FSA guaranteed loans, but in talking to other bankers, between FSA guaranteed loans and then a neighbor helping a young person come in, that's how they get new producers in their doors. And I know the paperwork on the FSA end is a pain in the butt because I've been through it too, but it does help these young guys fill out a cash flow budget and a balance sheet. And the young producers I've worked with have a better understanding of their business coming out of that. And it is a pain in the butt. I totally understand that. But and I just want to touch on Doug's deal. I see these young people come in the door and all they want to do is be a part of ag, but there's so many barriers to get them there. And I've always wondered if there was a way to connect willing couples who would just like to see young people in ag and these young producers who just want to be in ag. And I don't know how you filter, because there's some young people that, well, we've seen lots of places just run away kind of deal with transfer and generations, and those kids don't want to be there. But there are a lot of young kids that want to be on the place. And I've never known quite how to make those connections because I want to see them on the place too. We've seen plenty of places just kind of end in production agriculture. So I don't know what that is, but.
Anybody else? Well, while you're thinking, right over here. So we, just to share, and that just, we were in Three Forks, and a veterinarian shared that in the veterinary industry, there's actually a portal or a website, if you will, to link people up to either that's a mentorship, or I have a clinic I want to sell, and I want to try to help this young veterinarian get in, and had really great ideas, kind of to your point, and that's for sure been on our notes as well, as and how do we help propagate something like that. So great point. Thank you for bringing it up.
Kenny McCurlick of Jordan and Fallon. I'm trying to focus my attention on Senator Daines's aid. The big thing to take away, and I know we're not supposed to touch on it, is the futures market controls our live cattle market, and all things keep it suppressed. Even the LRP, which is a good thing, the insurance companies, correct, they get into the futures market to offset their risk, and they keep a break on the futures of live cattle, feeder cattle, correct, in order to offset their risk on a good program that allows us risk mitigation. But LRP, something needs done in order to offset the subsidy harvesting and the insurance companies, their appetite to actually get in and put a brake on what the futures can rise, because the whole industry, our live cattle price is the main thing, that everything else that we do as cow-calf or feeders is basically a derivative of live cattle. So that is, I think, if nobody said it, hopefully plainer than I have, that's the main thing, is we have to do something to get that in a better way to let that market grow, the live cattle market. And I guess the other thing is I do have some FSA experience, and as I've got a loan with them on ground, and it is $600,000 max on the ground, which doesn't go very far now. That's, they've got to raise those, and which will, I assume, happen in the Farm Bill, but operating and ground has to be, the limits have to be raised. Thank you.
So just to follow up, we've heard similar comments. So what would your suggestion be for a limit?
Say that?
Have you thought about what an ideal limit would be?
Well, that's like a question for you. How much do you want to take away from your local banks, right? Like a part of what we're all here for is our communities are dying because we're not getting as much margin. But then if we leave our local banks and just go with the FSA, that takes a bunch of jobs away from our local communities too. So would I like better operating at lower levels through the FSA with expanded limits for all of my operating to make better cash flow? Yes. But that's a give or take from your local bank that, you know, them are the people in your schools and everything like that too. So everything's a catch-22 in this business. We all know that.
Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts? You know, one thing I wanted just to kind of mention, and we'll kind of get transition into our next stage here, but, you know, when we went through COVID, we learned that we are essential. You know, all of us that were taking care of livestock, it kind of was irrelevant if you were sick or not. You still had to feed your livestock. And it brought up actually some topics during that LMA working group on, you know, are we really defining ourselves correctly as, let's say, livestock operators? You know, because right now you need to be a criteria to be a farm or a producer. And does that need to be looked at? And it kind of goes back to a little bit what Shane mentioned and others. Just, should there be a better criteria for the producers that are truly dedicated to providing the food for this country and that are really providing a national security tool for all of us? Not only feeding our country, but we're a major player in helping feed the world. And should those producers be looked at differently? If that's from the tax portion, or if that's from, like the PRF was a good example. You know, that has been another big discussion. Now, when you put some attorneys in the room and some tax accountants in there, that gets complicated. But that sure doesn't mean we shouldn't try to talk about it. And so just to share that, and if you have any ideas in that area, would love to hear it, and you can pass that on. And so, you know, we're gonna, unless there's any burning questions or comments here, we're gonna move to the next portion of this. Did you have something?
I guess I could just mention this young lady that we're helping actually grew up fairly close to where we grew up, so we've known her and we've known her family. And so I guess that's what I would suggest, is just look around at your neighbors. You don't have to help somebody from a long ways away. But do you have, you know, we all have neighbors that didn't have as much as we had. And, you know, look around, just help somebody that's close by. And that's kind of what we did.
Great. Thank you. Just to conclude that, if you want to make further comments, go online, mtbeef.org, on the Producer Profitability Initiative site, and then there's they have a great form that you can fill out, and you can type out your comments, and we'd love to hear it. And so all the feedback has been great tonight. Thank you all that have spoke. And the other thing I do want to just make sure, and I'll probably say it again, is there's other listening sessions. And so if you know someone that couldn't make it tonight, we're also going to be in Miles City tomorrow. And if you also want to come again tomorrow, we'd love to have you as well. So I'll turn it over to Rayleigh.
And thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. As Turk said, we've had people follow up with us after the listening session, so you are going to have some tractor time or windshield time in the next couple weeks, and things might pop up into your head. So we really encourage you to either submit that form or call our office, or call one of our or your local directors or a stock Growers board member, because we are really trying to capture all of these things. We will be kind of rolling out a report at our mid-year convention or a mid-year meeting, which will be in Miles City, May 28th through the 30th. And so if you're interested in kind of seeing the culmination of all of these listening sessions, I would encourage you to consider attending that event. So as we wrap up, we have just 3 questions that we want to get your feedback on now that you've heard kind of the focus areas and what people are thinking about. So the first question is the 5 categories that we hit on: tax, government programs, labor, barriers to entry, and mentorship. We want you to rank those and let us know what you feel is the most important or the highest priority that we should focus on, and let us know, that will help us kind of prioritize as we put all of our feedback together, really where we're going to focus on and put some actionable items too. So I'll give you a few minutes to kind of rank those. And it's like I would hit refresh on your window if you don't see the questions. Does that work? Perfect.
Can you read that?
Huh?
Can you read that?
Yes, I can read that.
Jeez.
Number 1 we have currently is tax climate, followed by barriers for entry, and then it just swapped. Now it's labor, and then government programs, followed by mentorship. But ever changing as people keep submitting their answers. All right. We'll give you 1 or 2 more seconds there. It looks like everybody's got theirs submitted. All right, next, what topics from tonight's discussion did you find the most valuable? Tonight I learned if I have extra money to send it Lon's way, and he'll help me invest it.
I haven't been doing so good.
While you guys are submitting, did everybody get their name entered into the drawing? We have the vaccine cooler we'll be drawing just a second, so if you haven't filled out your form, raise your hand quickly and Ian will grab a ticket for you, but I think we have everybody covered, so. Okay. And moving on to our last question. How can Montana stock growers and the Producer Profitability Initiative serve you and your family's operation? This is kind of our catch-all. Any additional items or requests or thoughts, we'd love to hear those from you. So while you are submitting those, Ian, I'll have you come down. We have been lucky enough to have a lot of great partners partnering with us regarding these listening sessions. On your back page of your packet, you'll see a lot of those listed. In addition to all of the auction yards, we've also partnered with Western Ranch Supply and Bullring or Ingelheim to get us some vaccine coolers so that you can go home and be the envy of the next branding or whatever. Okay, so Ian drew the name, and our winner is Victoria Tormanen. How do you say your last name? Tormanen. So congratulations from Stanley, North Dakota. Before you leave, we'd like to take a picture with the cooler and you. So track Ian down. Congratulations. All right, any final comments, Turk?
Yeah, I just wanted to give one more a special recognition and thanks to Forrest. And Forrest, I just want to make sure everybody recognizes, if you don't mind standing up, but Forrest represents the Livestock Marketing Association, and they've been a big part of working with all the Montana sale barns and really helping put this all together. And so thank you very much, Forrest, for helping really help make it happen and getting it organized. And it's been really powerful being able to go through this process. And now you guys are actually part of a bigger process. And these ideas are really going in, and we're trying to summarize them, and your ideas are heard. And you are part of the solution, and we really appreciate it. The one thing I always like to bring up, and it came up, but one of them is the question is, well, now what? Right? I mean, that was great. Well, now what? Well, as we learned and we are getting the feel of what are really important issues, is we already have boots on the ground. And we're trying to create really a partnership, alliance with other agricultural groups. Rayleigh's done an awesome job of reaching across with other states with their cattlemen's groups. There's actually for sure one other state, if not two other states, that are literally watching us as we perform these and seeing how they can start this process in their state and going through virtually the same format. Because what this really comes down to is we need Congress, and we need our elected officials to really understand this what needs to be done. And so just like we have our meeting tomorrow, but we have no meetings next week. And the reasons we have no meetings next week is our officer team is going to be in D.C. And we are going to be at Senator Daines' office and our other elected officials. And we're going to be at some department heads. And we're going to be already sharing this story of your guys' feedback. And just to show you, I mean, this is happening, and you're very much part of the process. And so can't thank you enough. If you have any other feedback, please just, it never happens when you want it to happen. So we're trying to create every format we can to be able to, give us feedback. So there again, Rayleigh, anything else? Monty or Keith? Vaughn? Forrest? Okay. Thank you very much. There's still some food out there, so we appreciate you all attending tonight.